Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday Build. This is episode 1.49, and today we're going to be discussing the topic, the Legal Tech Associate, an ideal blend with hybrid incentives, featuring shifting roles and compensation in large and small firms. My name is Brittany Hernandez, and I am a lawyer, a professional no-code, low-code developer, a legal tech educator, and the global ambassador to law schools for Gavel. So as I mentioned, today we're going to be discussing this kind of idea and topic around legal tech associate, which is a role that is starting to come into form in these kind of more recent ages of hybrid roles of associate and legal technologist. So the reason I wanted to talk about this today is I recently had a conversation with Malin, who I got to be on a panel with when I was a speaker in Tallinn, Estonia earlier this year in May, where we were part of the Future Law Conference. And our conversation was really around alternative roles in the kind of industry where we have a lot of different people who are not really focusing solely on associate work anymore. So we wanted to share what our new roles were. In my case, as the global ambassador to law schools, representing a vendor in different law schools, doing more on the training side of legal technology, teaching people how to create new applications, how to create workflows, to do internal automation, things like that. And I also got to hear from Malin, and she talked about her role at DLA Piper in Sweden and how that role was really kind of turned into this hybrid role of legal technologist and attorney. So this is a really interesting conversation because I think more and more we're going to see people who are asking for this type of role, but them having to be created. In this particular case, Malin was in law school. She was working at DLA Piper Sweden. And what she did was she actually worked first as a legal technologist specifically. And when you're doing legal technology work in a firm, it generally will involve you in more of a business support type of role. So this can be more like legal operations or on the side of like, how can we make the rest of the attorneys who are working make their jobs more efficient, even though I may be a lawyer as well or trained in the law, I'm not doing like active client work. Now, what Malin did later was she actually advocated with her different partners to create a role called the Legal Tech Associate in DLA Piper Sweden that allows her to split up her time half, or actually in this case, I think they have a 60-40 split, but you can see her story here. This one from the legal technologist, H as in hybrid, my legal tech legal hybrid role from October 12th, 2022. So this is Malin, and she really goes over her story and how they were able to kind of work this out together. So here she talks about how this split is 40-60, 40% legal tech work, 60% associate work. The billable target is 50% less than for full-time associates. And so she kind of goes through how she was able to talk through this idea with the key stakeholders and decision makers who would need to buy in, and where the budget would come from to fund a role like this. Now, I thought this would be an interesting conversation to kind of just go through a little bit of some observations that I found as I've been like kind of thinking about this role, what the future of this role is, how it could be implemented. From my conversation with Malin when we got to have a little bit of a one-on-one, and I asked her some questions about her role. And I wanted to kind of start to see a little bit of some trends around what's happening in the industry in this sense of creating legal tech associate roles. So some of the observations I have are that I think that the larger firms are really paving the way here. And I think I can see that from kind of some examples of like DLA Piper, for example, but also Linklater's, because in the case here where, and it looks like my autocorrect changed the name here. So Linklater's, for example, has Tanya here, who is a banking lawyer. And one of the things she has also done is get to work in the innovation space. So she's an innovation lead. and she's on a secondment there. So basically in her position, what she's getting to do is she's an associate. She's worked in, the Tokyo office, and she's been, a regular attorney. But she's also had this opportunity to spend some time in this practice innovation team, which focuses on banking practice. But what she's also been able to do is do things like figuring out how they can incorporate Gen AI into the practice. There's different posts you can see from here, but you can also see that she's been able to do things like go to a business school in their artificial intelligence program, and you see a lot of support from these larger firms of their associates trying new things, getting deeper education in things like AI, and getting to have some time spent in innovation roles outside of their practice as a lawyer as well. So I think these are two really good examples of those larger firms. There's one out of Scotland called Thornton's, where Sarah Blair is the innovation lead here. So she's the director of technology and transformation. So I believe she's been so she's kind of more on the director of IT type of side. And so she's been doing that for many years. She's been at Thornton's for 25 years. But I like this idea of like technology and transformation, but you do kind of see this distinction here where she's focused specifically on that kind of technological innovation side. But we do see these kind of like bigger firms really focusing on creating space and budget and time for associates to explore legal tech side and roles and to contribute to the firm in that way as well. So I think that with that, though, it does require some flexibility, buy-in, and negotiation. So what Malin will mention here is you'll see that she had to kind of bring this idea up and advocate for this role being created. Because she talks in this kind of article about how certain aspects of the sector are still quite traditional. And as a lawyer, what kind of ends up happening when you go into practice is you are either on a partnership track or in the in-house one, and kind of this prevalent legal career in a law firm is still dominated by that of junior associate, senior associate, partner, or special counsel. And then so now, though, you see this kind of role of legal technology is just coming out, and other ones such as legal tech managers, legal designers, knowledge management lawyers, and so on. But it does, as she mentions here, still really require a choice between like being a lawyer and being business support. And so what would be like kind of a non-lawyer. But if you spent all this training becoming a lawyer, but you're also excited by technology and how we can use it in our own practice and build our own solutions with these different no-code or low-code tools, how can we create even client-facing applications? This can be a really exciting new frontier for someone who is coming out of law school, who has done some practical training in these types of platforms, and then go into their practice and not really get to use those skills that they've acquired. So for her, she wanted both. So what she did is, so she spent 2 years at DLA Piper Sweden working as a legal technologist. So she did things like project management, digitalization initiatives, implementation of new software, and so on and so forth. So you'd do like trainings and things like that. So she really enjoyed that. However, when she graduated with a Master of Laws with focus in IT and media law, she wanted to like kind of see how she could incorporate both of those things together, because she was kind of at this fork in the road where she had to decide, am I going to be fully a legal technologist and not really get to use all this stuff that I just learned and this passion that I have? Or is there any way that I can put these two things together? And it seemed for her like a waste of a good education to just not even get to try out the shoes of an associate and just only do legal technology. So at this point, she was able to find a way forward with DLA Piper. And what she did is she sat down together with the head of knowledge management and legal tech, partners from the firm and the head of human resources to discuss a hybrid role, a role combining both the traditional associate work and the legal technologist work. So the result was a new role, the legal tech associate. So what she kind of goes on to say here is that a lot of people will say that this type of role is like tremendously difficult and it's hard to do or get right, because essentially you run the risk of working, 2 times as much as you normally would, or that you would end up dropping the ball on one and like really excelling in the other, or, dropping the ball on both, because part of the job, just takes up a lot of space on your agenda because you need to have client meetings and so on. So one of the other things she mentions is risk of lack of support, lack of understanding of the value that this role can bring, not just for the individual, but for the firm as a whole. So they went through and they created some, very clear boundaries around this role. So what the split would be, where the budget would come from, what the expectations were around available hours, and she was still acting as an associate. So the split is 40-60, 40% legal tech work, 60% associate work. This meant that all of the lower level tasks previously part of the legal tech work, such as onboarding, offboarding, and putting out the daily fires, were removed from the job description, and they brought on the role of a legal tech trainee. The billable target is 50% less than for full-time associates. That percentage was decided to account for transition time, among other reasonings. And then it's a pilot, meaning that they all agree to add a certain amount of flexibility, full transparency, and short feedback loops to the equation. So what's been really cool for me to watch as somebody who cares about how this role gets developed, not only for her, but also in the wider legal community, is what has happened since then, because this was a little over a year ago that this article came out. And I only talked to her just a few weeks ago. And at that time, she was mentioning that the team is actually growing. So they're not doing away with this role. They've actually found it to be very valuable, and so valuable to actually add to the team. So they're actually hiring now for a legal technologist. So to join kind of that group of people that they've put together as part of this pilot department. So in this particular realm, I think this is really exciting to see, because we're seeing the growth of innovation also from an incentivization standpoint. So if you look at kind of like the different need for new compensation structures, I think this can be hard to do sometimes in a traditional firm, because we're so used to having billable hour targets, and if you don't meet those, you're penalized in some way. If you do hit those or go beyond that, you get bonuses in some way. And so how to value and compensate for these types of roles can be really challenging for firms that are so used to having their compensation structures be in a very particular way. But it's really encouraging to see that these larger firms like DLA Piper and Linkladders, as well as Thornton's in this case, have accommodated for changes in roles and have found different strategies and ways that they can accommodate the passion and interests of associates who want to contribute to the firm in many different ways, with lots of aspects of their skill sets, not just one. And I think that Malin's role is a really, really good example of this. So finally, I just wanted to quickly comment on this idea of like what projects they're actually working on and who are their end users in the case of this legal technology and associate role. And also kind of that importance of, or why it might be important for a legal technologist to also be an associate. So I think I'll add that kind of like expert developer importance of kind of thing, because in this particular case, if we talk about different end users, depending on the focus first, for example. So in the case of somebody who's a legal technologist or in legal ops, or, kind of more on the business operations side, what can often be the case is that you are testing solutions, integrating solutions, and implementing different pieces, or understanding how you can maximize the usage of tools you already have, or strip different pieces away and really focus your attention on maybe a few different tools and using them really effectively. What can usually happen too is that your end users as the legal tech associate, or the person who's the legal technologist in that case, is that your users are the attorneys in the firm, not necessarily clients. So I think this is a really important distinction because you can do one or the other or both. So in my case, I would love to kind of find a role where both of those things get to happen. And Malins kind of does this as well. So she's often looking for solutions that make the attorney's work more efficient, or, we're able to maximize them, better collaboration, things like that. Maybe document automation, drafting, and so on. And then she also trains people on how to implement these different solutions. However, a lot of the time when you're developing legal technology with no-code tools, for example, since I'm kind of in more of the Gavel space, I often think about how I can automate or create something that would be having a client as an end user. So when you're considering how you would create these, you would create them in different ways because you have a different person using them for a different reason on the other side. So if I was creating a workflow that allowed the internal attorney to automate a will, for example, in an estate plan, maybe I would build that quite differently than if I was creating a legal tech product that would be something that would be shown to and purchased by an end user consumer who is a client of our firm. So those would be built very differently, maybe keeping in mind what other workflows and processes we have around that particular application or tool. And so I think that that's a really key one, is in that role, you'd want to consider, who are you building for if you're building something yourself, or who is kind of using this as the end user. Finally, to what I mentioned and added here is this idea of the expert developer and the importance of this. And so I add this in because of that piece of why is it important to be a hybrid mix of an associate and a legal technologist. And I think that the importance here is on this key idea of I am the user and the builder and the person who is getting feedback directly from clients. So you get to be positioned in all of these really important places. So you are directly interfacing with a client, hearing direct feedback about the process of working with our firm, for example. And then I'm also generating the documents or creating whatever I need to do for that client. So I'm seeing my own problems, I'm seeing the client's problems, and I now have the skills to address both of those issues with legal technology. And I've been given the time and space to work on those while still being compensated in a way that works for the firm. So I think that that's really the highest value of this kind of legal tech associate, is you have this ability to have expert developers who know not only their expertise in their practice, but they also have skills in practical training for legal technology that they can combine together to solve problems of clients, as well as solve internal team problems from collaboration, automation, and so on. So I just thought this would be an interesting conversation to think about how different firms, large and small and medium size, are dealing with these around kind of like how to find jobs in this space. I think it's still a little bit difficult because even if you just try to Google like let's try like legal tech associate jobs, you'd see that there's like solicitor innovation legal tech or legal tech placement, or like there's different ones around, but this is something that she like helped create. So even though there might be legal tech jobs, maybe like legal technologists, or as I mentioned, kind of one or the other, they might still be making you split and decide whether you're going to stay solely in more of a legal ops type of role or as an attorney. So I think though we're seeing more people who are putting together these types of job opportunities and listservs type of thing, where you can see like that there's a job at Clifford Chance for a project analyst, or that there's a job here for a specialist solutions architecture, something where something around consultant for legal and so on. So there's these job boards that are starting to pop up a little bit around opportunities in this space. So I would really say like watch this space to see like how this particular career ends up growing. Another good resource would be a podcast by Mark May of the legal technologist called All Paths Lead to Legal Tech. And so I actually did an episode for this one that hasn't been posted yet, but maybe in the next 2 or so. I think I was going to be around episode 16. But go through these and listen to the different paths that people have taken to roles in the legal tech space. And you'd be really interested. I think it's really interesting to hear kind of like how people kind of got to the roles that they're in. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up here. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll give you my information in a moment. With just a few announcements. So this has been an episode of the Wednesday Build with new episodes live every Wednesday. And then I also do Code Word Hacks, which has new issues out every Tuesday. On that one, that's going to be more of how-tos, specifically in things like Gavel and Softer and Airtable and so on. And then that also is accompanied by the Tuesday Forecast, which is a free weekly newsletter. I also have Gavel certification courses and courses in Softer and Airtable, Go Full Page, and more to come. And we also have a community called Command Global, where you can connect with like-minded individuals all around the world. And then there's also an active Slack group for the Gavel community. So thanks again for being here, for those of you that are with me live, and for those of you that are on the recording, hello. So we're going to meet again next Wednesday, the 13th of December at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We're going to discuss the topic, the power of champions and gatekeepers, empowering key collaborations for expansion. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or via email at brittany@command.pro. Or any inquiries related to Gavel's law school program, you can just email me at brittany@gavel.io. So that's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.